Kia ora koutou, listeners. We are going back to the roots of this podcast, to the very first interview I had with Rich Alderton, who is helping organisations with their mind shift to adaptability in order to navigate and lead change. I was really keen to catch up with Rich, who is now based over in the UK in Cambridge, working with organisations in Europe and the UK, and I wanted to glean what he's seeing, what he's working on, what are the patterns he's seeing. I'm not sure what else we'll cover, but I think it's a great opportunity to find out from a guy who is at the leading edge of this adapting world that we live in, and learn from a guy who is on the ground over there. Hope you enjoy it. Here we go, we're underway. Good morning, Rich Alderton.
Good morning, Harv. How very good to talk to you again.
This is a wonderful time for me because it's 5:41 p.m. where I am, but it's 6:41 a.m. where you are.
Yeah, and it feels like 5:41 a.m.
So, Rich, thank you so much for fitting me in into this. And for those who don't know, Rich was my very first interviewee for this podcast, and I remember it vividly, Rich, and thank you for getting me started.
Hey, no, thanks for inviting me. I remember it well. I think I just jumped off a plane. I think it was 2019, a very, very long time ago.
Yes, it'll be about there. Yep, about there. And we've got about 100 episodes under our belt since then. It's not quite, it's somewhere around there. We could have commemorated the 100th with you, Rich, but you're not that important.
You've been talking to my wife again.
I have. So, Rich, I was really keen to talk to you about, you're in the UK now. I was really interested to talk to you about what is going on over there in your world. So before we do, because people won't know you, because people actually listen to this shit, Rich, which is pretty cool. So, who are you? Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, okay. So I'm Rich Alderton. I lived in New Zealand for 9 years until 2018, which is how we met. I became a member of Collective Intelligence, and as I've travelled the world ever since, I still haven't found anything like what you do, Harv. So kudos to you, and I have said that to you a couple of times. I was climbing my way up the corporate ladder. I became the CEO of a small SME, multinational, based out of New Zealand, based in Hamilton. And then I decided that actually what I would try and do is, rather than just become a bigger and bigger CEO, I actually asked myself what was my own personal purpose. I was quite good at doing it for big corporations and thinking about them, but not really myself. So when I figured out that my purpose was to help as many people as I could to enjoy rather than endure the life of change that surely lies ahead for us all, it was a pretty easy decision to take that step and set up on my own, which I did while I was still living in New Zealand back in the end of 2014. Came back to the UK in 2018, and it's a fairly portable thing. We might get into adaptability a bit later on, but ever since I've been working with organizations, anything from a 30-minute keynote, to I'm currently working with one of the largest corporations on earth, and I've been with them for 18 months. So I'm really trying to help people get to grips with what's going on out there. And I suppose if you ask me what I do, I could answer that with a question, because I'm a management consultant, right? And And my favourite question, one of my favourite questions is your external environment moving faster than your internal environment? And if the answer to that question is yes, and it normally is, then I can help you deal with that. I suppose that, in a nutshell, is what I do, Harv.
And Rich, you mentioned the word earlier, adaptability, and you've written some stuff around that. And is that's your hotspot?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. My other favourite question to ask leaders is, how do you prepare your people for change? Because I've seen change from most different angles. I've been a pawn in the game. I've been a change manager, a project manager. I've been a sponsor of change in my larger roles. And overwhelmingly, if people do take any kind of proactive, structured approach to change, it always seems to be limited to project management and change management. That's what people always default to. And the problem with that is everybody will say people are our most strategic asset. No leader's ever going to get sacked for saying anything else. The trouble is, when it comes to change, which is the most risky, expensive and disruptive thing an organization will ever do, we only ever start preparing our people for change once that change is already there in front of us. And that is actually the complete dictionary definition of tactical, right? If you don't react until something has actually happened to you, then you're operating tactically. So we are, in a world of change, we are operating tactically with our most strategic asset. And we don't change the mindset of our people, we just rely on projects. And here's the thing about projects. They're really good at changing what people do. I was using this IT system, now I'm using that IT system. But they're really not very good at changing how we think and feel about change itself. It doesn't change our relationship with change, our attitude to change. And surely we all need to be a little bit better at that, even me. Although I try and put myself forward as an expert on this matter, I'm certainly no whiz kid, and I've met people much more adaptable than I am. And I think that if you don't like change today, and most people don't, and we're going to go in, and we'll talk about trends maybe in a minute, and if the world is going to have more change in the future, then if you didn't like change yesterday, then you're not going to like your life very much more tomorrow. And that all sounds a bit depressing, doesn't it? So what we have to do is we have to change people's mindsets so that when they do come across change, they actually have the confidence to face that change, even if it's an awful negative change, so that they can actually take the confidence to deal with whatever happens next. And that gets me leaping gazelle-like out of bed in the morning.
Rich, so what are you seeing in the UK and Europe at the moment? What are the trends you're seeing?
Well, one of the biggest trends, obviously, we can't talk about trends without talking about AI. And I've got clients who are making a living out of AI. Now, Harv, I should just put a disclaimer in at this point and say I can't even spell AI.
Mate, I can. I'm all over it. I know so much about it.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, God.
Okay, then we should just listen to you a bit more. I've always said that. What gets me excited about AI is, without understanding any of the real intricacies of it, is that there are four fundamentals that we've identified for the adaptable organization, right? And one of them is curiosity. And what AI does, the curiosity is to see the need or opportunity for change. So either you're scanning the horizon, that external environment, to see there's an opportunity that you can grab, an opportunity to be grabbed or a threat to be managed. But either way, you need to be curious. That's what I've always loved about collective intelligence, is that it drives and fuels and catalyzes curiosity. And you meet people that you would never normally meet.
Yep.
So, of course, what AI does is it allows you to be very much more curious. So you can make data-driven decisions. You can do predictive analytics. You can make much more sense of that external environment. And all those excuses that we as leaders used to use about, well, we don't really know what's going on out there, and there isn't really time anymore.
Yep.
Because we're as we found out in COVID, most companies are never more than 3 months away from running out of cash. So we've just got to get our head down, bum up, and earthworm our way through our current to-do list. And curiosity is really a luxury we can't afford. Wrong, increasingly wrong, because AI is a very cost-effective means of finding out what's going on. And the companies that will succeed are the ones that are embracing that, and the ones that aren't will regress, and they'll fall further and further behind until they fall over.
And so just going back to your collective intelligence experience, and you remember, and it's still the same, a well-crafted question is gold. And
yeah,
right. And so, because the little bit I've seen with AI is that, what's the question you're going to ask it?
Yeah, and look, we've been training on Google for a couple of decades, haven't we? But now it's going to the next level. But we all know from searching Google that the question you ask it, the answer's in there. You just got to ask it the right question. It's the same principle. The difference with the AI is it will take that information that it sees, and it will actually make some kind of analysis and a prediction, and turn that information into understanding and wisdom, which Google can't do. I suppose Google Analytics can. So I see that there is going to be the world is potentially going to speed up again with the use of AI, and we're going to learn all sorts of things that we didn't know before, and we're going to be weighed down with a whole load of information that we'll be able to make better decisions. The question is, will we actually make better decisions? Because those decisions represent change. And in my experience, I started off on the shop floor packing strepsils on the night shift for Boots in Nottingham, and I ended up sitting on the board of a very small listed company on the NZX. And on that journey, what I discovered was that most people resist most change most of the time, and that's not really quite so surprising when you understand that we spent 50,000 years evolving and surviving because we've got this amygdala, adrenaline inducing system in our brains that causes us fear and anxiety. And we see change as a threat to our security. It's a completely natural self-protecting defense mechanism. No wonder we don't like it. We shouldn't be surprised that when we force change on people, they recoil. That's how we're programmed. But that's not enough. We have to help people get over that these days, and that's kind of what I do.
Rich, you talked about 4 things, and we started on AI. What are the other 3?
So curiosity is the first one. And actually, it's interesting to apply AI to this. So long before I could even think about saying AI, let alone spell it, these 4 things, the 4 fundamentals of an adaptable organization are the curiosity. And actually, this is really the dictionary. This is the real definition of what adaptability is. The dictionary will tell you it's the ability to adjust to new conditions, which is absolutely right. Who would argue with the OED? It's a little bit dry and almost entirely useless at helping you understand how to be, what it takes to be more adaptable. So it's the curiosity to see the need or opportunity for change. It's the creativity to come up with some kind of innovative solution. It's about having the courage to then put that creative solution that your curiosity has brought you to into effect. And it's about having the velocity to turn in the right direction within the time window, because we, as we know, if you do the right thing at the wrong time, you'll still get the wrong result. Now, if you apply that first trend I'm talking to, AI, to all of those, well, which ones can it affect? Well, clearly, it's having a major effect on curiosity. We've covered that. We could have a nice philosophical debate about whether AI can be creative, because arguably, if it is helping you decide what your strategy is, that is absolutely, I tell leaders all the time that you think that your strategy is an absolute fact-based guaranteed process. Absolutely not. It's almost entirely a creative process. And if it isn't, then you're not trying hard enough. Yeah. So there is absolutely a case to say AI is creative. And if you look at velocity, well, of course, AI can help us make decisions, and it can find out things and spot trends in ways that humans will never be able to do, just like computers started doing for us 30, 40 years ago. The only one that AI cannot touch is courage. That very, very, all of those things, it's the one that really comes from the heart, obviously. It's the one that is the most human. And you can argue that AI will help adaptability in people, in teams, in organizations from here on in more and more. The one thing it won't give you is courage. That we have to figure out. You could say if you're better prepared and you've got more information, that will help you be courageous, but you've got to have that within you kind of from the start.
Rich, what makes companies more courageous than others?
There's a whole bunch of internal and external factors that drive courage. So for an external factor might be your purpose. I say to people, if you want a bigger belief in yourself, believe in something bigger than you are. And that will help you get out of your own way. And if your purpose is your effect on society that goes beyond just delivering, profit to your bottom line, I've already told you what my purpose is, and that changed my professional life. So that's one. Then there's need. If you're absolutely up against it and you're about to go to the wall, then it's possible to find all sorts of courage, because if you don't act with courage, then you're up against it. The kind of cornered animal effect of if a competitor is about to beat you on the head, then it's time for David and Goliath. And then there's the internal stuff that drives courage, which is your inner strength, and maybe it comes back to purpose again. There's a crossover there, that it is what you believe in, your beliefs, your assumptions, your values, all of that soft stuff that people like me bang on about inside organizations. Those people who have the courage to speak up. And also then, there's how safe you feel. That we talk about trust. Lencioni talks about trust. Amy Edmondson talks about psychological safety, a term that's been around since 1954, but has been popularized recently by her. So people will speak up and they will act out and be courageous if they believe that they will be backed by those people around them. If you're going to step outside your comfort zone, which by definition is an uncomfortable thing to do, then you have to feel that if you go out there and fail, one, you will be dragged back from the danger zone by those around you. And two, that you will be applauded for the toleration of thoughtful failure, not kicked in the teeth because all failure is seen as a negative.
Yep. Rich, recently, so it's interesting what I'm seeing in New Zealand at the moment is, and I've got one in particularly in my head, one of our members. He has been in the most incredible discomfort now for 14 months. Incredible discomfort. And I won't reveal any more than that because it's not necessary. And he's just held the line. Just held the line and held the line and held the line. And I've reflected on that, and I think one of the really important things, it's not to do with adaptability, but what I'm seeing is the ability of people to withstand pain is often the difference between whether they get through or not. And this guy is very close to getting through, but he totally believes in what he's doing, and he's just holding it.
Right. So I was going to ask you, so where is he getting his strength from? But it's his purpose. He believes in what he's doing.
And I think, it's tied up because of this purpose thing. You talk about it sounds all woolly, but fuck, it makes a difference.
Most people have self-doubt. Lots of people, particularly successful people, it seems. More and more that I do this, I'm surprised how much there is self-doubt and imposter syndrome rife in the world in some of the people that you think, really, you, after what you've achieved.
Yeah.
And that's why I have this phrase. If you want a bigger belief in yourself, believe in something bigger than you are, because we get so focused on ourselves and everything that all the mistakes and foibles that we have. We know ourselves. Most people know themselves reasonably well. And we know everything that we're not doing, perfectly. And we tend to blow those things up. And then that stops us in our tracks. And we think, well, if I'm doing it for me, well, I'm just not going to do it because I'm really not good enough.
Yeah.
But if you are driven by helping others and having a purpose that serves society, something you believe in, like that guy, then it actually helps you get out of your own way. And most of what you needed to get out of the way of wasn't real in the first place. And actually, so there's no detriment there. You're not putting yourself in any danger by getting yourself out of your own way. And then you'll full force towards something positive. And then you look round and look in the mirror and go, I actually did that. Well, that was good. Well, that was better than I thought. Because your purpose has kind of pulled you by the nose rather than you having to push yourself.
Yep. So, Rich, coming back to, so you're doing this work with this big corporation. Congratulations. That would be a bit of fun.
It certainly has been. Yeah.
And a scale that we can hardly comprehend in New Zealand.
Yes, yeah, it is. I mean, crikey, I certainly think New Zealand punches above its weight. And I used to work in Sweden, a country that also punches above its weight in terms of large corporations. But yes, here in the UK, we do have maybe not American or Chinese sized companies, but we gargantuan. One of the top 10 in the world.
Yeah. So, Rich, the thing that I was really interested in talking to you was, number one, what are the trends you're seeing? What are the companies that are making more progress to those who aren't? What are the differences that you're seeing there? What are those top companies that are adapting, what are they doing differently?
From the work I do, Harv, there is a very clear trend that obviously there's more change. I'll maybe come on to that a bit later. But what change causes us, as I've already kind of alluded to, is that because we are these primeval animals underneath all of this lovely professional veneer that we have, change threatens our security, and that drives fear and anxiety. What I'm seeing is that it's the companies that are prepared to talk about that stuff. I say we're afraid to talk about fear at work. There's still very much a taboo about being afraid. The good news is that we seem to be a lot less reticent to talk about anxiety at work.
Yep.
That is a trend that is happening more and more. And blimey, we need it, because it feels to me like there is more and more anxiety in the world, and it doesn't seem to. Obviously, it peaked during COVID, but it doesn't seem to be going away. And I did some research recently, and here in the UK, in 22-23, the amount of anxiety, the amount of high levels of anxiety that people experienced compared with 10 years ago has basically gone up by 2/3. It's exploded. Women are more susceptible than men. I think the figures were 37% of women, 30% of men, and young people. So I've got 2 teenage daughters, so they're right in the middle of the Venn diagram. If you're a young woman, then you are particularly prone to anxiety. Now, if I put my old CEO hat on, of course we care about the people, and the anxiety for the sake of anxiety is worth worrying about. But when you look at it from a fiduciary perspective, not just a pastoral one, people who are anxious, what's happening in your mind is that you are spinning the wheels inside your head, going nowhere fast. And anxiety becomes all-consuming. There are a few major differences between fear and anxiety that I've figured out on my journey of specializing in adaptability, and one of them is that fear makes you act without thinking. That's the knee-jerk adrenaline fight or flight response. And anxiety makes you think without acting. So anxiety is useful if it helps you think about negative events that might happen in the future, and then you do something to mitigate them. That's exactly what the likes of NASA do. They think about what could possibly go wrong out there on the edge of nowhere, and then they make plans, and they put risk action plans in place. What we as normal human beings do is none of that. We just spend more time worrying about the thing that we just started worrying about. And the path that we see for ourselves is an exponential decay cliff that ends us up at rock bottom. And what I've also discovered, just on, because anxiety is a massive trend, we need to understand how anxiety happens, right? We've got these 2 brilliant things, major assets. We've got this negativity bias, as psychologists call it, and that's the self-defense mechanism that's kept us alive for 50,000 years. Versions of us that didn't have that got eaten by saber-toothed tigers, and we didn't, because we were thinking about what could possibly go wrong. How often do we think about what could possibly go right? We're just pre-programmed to trend towards the negative. And that's a safety feature, right? All good. And on the other hand, we've got this thing that amongst the 9 million species on the planet, we're the only ones who have the ability to imagine a future that doesn't yet exist. It's why we run the planet, for better or worse. Yeah, worse. Okay. So on their own, they're great. Put them together, it's a car crash. Because now we use our negativity bias to have a massive imagination about what could possibly go wrong. And then we take a negative event and we multiply it by another negative event, and then we multiply that by our phone number, and all of a sudden the whole world's a disaster.
And then we've got social media saying everybody else has got their shit together.
Yeah. Absolutely. So woe is me, and not any of that self-doubt that we might have had is completely confirmed by everything we read from these beautifully curated lives that we see online. So anxiety is a major problem. And here's another factoid for you, right? Your brain weighs, well, obviously your brain weighs more than anybody else's, Harv, we all know that. But your brain weighs 3% of your body weight and consumes 20% of your energy. So when people say that anxiety is exhausting, they're not speaking metaphorically. It's absolutely real. I don't know why all anxious people aren't really thin. I mean, I get anxious and I'm not. So, but it is absolutely draining and exhausting. And the trouble is we use all of our energy to dig that vicious circle hole for us. And we dig so deep that we've then not got the energy to haul ourselves back out. Now, back to trends. If all of that is going on inside, the world's largest supercomputer that can really do a great job making shit up. Penn State University did a study that showed that 90% of what we worry about never actually happens. Imagine, Harv, you're a positive guy. Imagine if we could take all of that energy around the world, that the amount of anxiety within the 8 billion of us, if we could turn that, not just neutralize it, but take all of that energy, that negative energy that is complete, 90% of which is a complete waste of time, and we could do something positive with it, well, we could solve any problem. We could solve world hunger, the climate crisis. We could do anything. It all gets a bit existential, really, doesn't it? I hate to sound evangelical, but I'm really excited. This is definitely what helps me leap out of bed gazelle-like. And I'm not talking here about clinical levels of anxiety. I'm not qualified to talk about that. I'm just talking about normal, everyday, common garden anxiety that we all feel when we are faced with change that we haven't invented. So the trend is that we are becoming more and more anxious. That means that we will become more and more unproductive just at the very moment when the planet needs us to be doing the right things, bigger, better, faster, quicker. And anxiety and fear about change are really getting in our way. And what's our answer to this? Oh, we'll shove you into a project at the last minute and that will change what you do. And if you don't like it, you can get on the bus or get off it. It's not exactly a mature. We've been doing change since the Industrial Revolution. We should be better than this, Harv.
I'm going to digress slightly while you get with that. I follow a little group on Facebook. It's actually not a little group in New Zealand, 16,000 people in this group, and it's called Geoengineering. And it's 16,000 people that believe that climate change doesn't really exist. But in fact, the government and they and them and the corporations are causing the rain by spreading chemicals in the air. And when Jacinda had her wedding recently and it was fine, they were all going, see what she can do? She can create this fine weather in Hawke's Bay, for her wedding. And what I'm intrigued with this, Rich, is that there were some really intelligent people there, but they have gone down this rabbit hole, because the thing is, with this belief, you don't have to make any change, right? Because it's not my fault. I don't have to do anything. It's those fuckers over there. And I love saying, so who are they? And just quietly, I'm surprised I haven't been kicked out of the group yet, because I'm just intrigued to watch this profound anxiety about directed just in the wrong direction. And people are so passionate about this. And I'm going, wow, I think that a lot of that is caused by anxiety.
Oh, it's a beautiful solution, isn't it? There is no problem. I mean, let's bury our head in the sand.
Well, there is a problem. The government and people and they are very convincing, are spraying our, and they're showing bloody chemtrails and this and that, and they'll say, people go, I'm in Tamanui today, can anybody else taste the chemicals in the air? And this is, I feel really sad for them, Rich. I just go, anyway, I believe that's anxiety. I believe that is and that is based on fear, and it's also based on I don't have to do anything. I'm not part of that. It's over there. Don't have to worry about it. Life is happening to me and that's that external world thing, Rich. I'm really interested in that as well, because I wrote about this recently, and you can see when the outside world is moving faster, they become quite brittle as well, and it's just like they know it's sort of happening, but how do you join the world? Yeah. So Rich, that's not the answer I was expecting, brother.
Oh, you weren't expecting me to talk about anxiety?
No, I thought this was going to be some new management thing.
Well, okay, so I suppose the other trend is directly on my my pet subject, which is adaptability, and it certainly isn't a new management phenomenon. It does seem to be, though. When I decided to do this, nearly 10 years ago now, I certainly didn't expect, when I decided to focus my attention on helping people and organizations become more adaptable in their thinking, I certainly didn't expect to be a pioneer. I thought that I would tuck in nicely behind the big four consultancies who would have this all wrapped up, and they would be cutting the path with their machetes, and I would just kind of dawdle along in my deck chair, smoking a cigar, and just pick up the pieces, the bits that they dropped. Unfortunately, that's really not the case, and the trend is that the need for adaptability is becoming ever more apparent, but it seems to be largely an academic rise in voice on adaptability. There's still an awful lot of practitioners out there, people running organizations, who will readily agree that adaptability is very important, but they're not doing anything about it. And that's the really interesting question for me, is why not? So let me just give you a couple of statistics. In 2021 or two, Harvard Business School did a survey of 1,500 senior execs across 90 countries, and 71% of them said that adaptability was the most important leadership skill that they were looking for. Now, you think, how many leadership skills do you think that you can think of? And adaptability was more important than all of the others put together. Brilliant. I'm going to have an orderly queue at my door, and I shall be able to afford.
And you wouldn't be talking to me.
I would always be. However big I become and however small you become next to me, I will always talk to you.
Thank you.
I want you to know that.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
That's not the guy I am. No, but the really interesting thing is, Barclays Life Skills around the same time did another survey, and what they found was that only 8% of organizations are actually doing anything proactive about developing adaptability. There's another survey done by a boutique consultancy in London called Cognosis. Brilliant bunch of guys. And they did a study on 1 million bits of data from the MIT Business School, Sloan School. So this is kosher data. And what they did was they analysed the financial performance of 100 companies over 15 years, from 2003 to 18. And what they found, the headline is that they looked at what cultural traits, what drivers of behaviour were most important to those companies, and what happened to their relative financial performance. And lo and behold, the companies that prioritised and leaned the most heavily on being adaptable outperformed every single other, even those who put customer first. These guys outperformed. So the peloton, most drivers of behavior improved financial performance, revenue, by 2 to 3 times. Adaptability companies improved by 8 times. Then they looked at their return on investment. And again, adaptability companies were absolutely leaps ahead. They doubled their ROI from 15 to 30%. And in the same survey, those companies were then asked to self-assess themselves, and only 4% of that 100 said they were any good at adaptability. So the evidence is clear. I've never seen a survey that tags a leadership skill, something as intangible as a leadership skill, to the bottom line. The evidence from that survey, which is based on lots and lots of credible data, says that it's the adaptability delivers more value to the bottom line than any other driver of behavior, and those companies all think they're rubbish at it. 8% are only 8% are doing something about it, and 71% of leaders think it's the most important. I mean, the world has gone mad, Harv, because no company, no leader is listening to this is going to say anything other than, yes, we need to be more adaptable. The world's changing fast. What are you doing about it? So why aren't they doing anything about it? And the conversations that I've had come back to, well, do you know what? We didn't really think it was possible to become more adaptable. It's kind of just baked into your DNA, isn't it? You're born lucky or you're not. And what I've set out to prove and proven with companies in New Zealand and here in Europe is that anybody can learn to become more adaptable. That's why we call it adaptability intelligence. It is something that you can learn and apply, just like maths or music. And if you want to become more adaptable, you can. And I'm very excited and frustrated in equal measure that it seems to be taking so long for people like me to get this message out there, and why aren't others doing it? I'd love to have more competition where we could club together and change the world.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I was just thinking that, Rich, because when we talked, 4 or 5 years ago, I'm thinking a lot hasn't changed.
True.
And I mean, you're now dealing with bigger companies and so forth, but on the whole, a lot hasn't changed. And I talked before about some of the stuff that we adapted last year and embedding now. We've got 3 new products that work, and we're hopefully working with central government soon. And all of these are targeted at adaptability, and they're targeted from getting people from here to here. And one of the products is called Hatcher Teams, which wraps around an individual with a big idea and just chugs them through. 6-month period, takes them from here to here. Because good ideas are really, really hard to get going in New Zealand. It just does my head in. And sometimes the better the idea, the harder it is, because it just threatens so many people. Yeah,
in the UK, we seem to be really good at getting ideas off the ground and then not growing them. And then you look at how the US managed to do that and the amount of venture capital they've got to play with. They're really good at doing it all, at having that spark, turning that spark into an idea and into an innovation, and then scaling it.
Yeah.
So yeah. But just be careful that I'm very specific on the definition of adaptability. It is about your attitude to the idea of change. It isn't about putting people through a specific change, because all of us have been through projects, and most of us don't want to go through the next project any more than we just went through the last one, because it doesn't change our attitude to change. In most cases, often, change is done so badly that we actually like the idea of change even less than we did before we started that. So helping somebody get through an idea and launch a product is not the same as helping them to become more adaptable. If it's their idea, you don't need to be adaptable. Of course you want that change to happen. The true acid test of being adaptable is that you can see even negative change as the opportunity to make a positive difference.
Just say that again, Rich.
The true test of an adaptable mindset is that you can see even negative change as the opportunity to make a positive difference. And let me go further. Sometimes it is when we are really knocked sideways. So our business goes under, or we lose a loved one, or something catastrophic. Then we really find out what we're made of. And I say the difference between resilience and adaptability. Resilience is defined in the dictionary as the ability to bounce back. It's what palm trees do in a hurricane. You know, they bend in the wind, and then when the wind that change is over, they go back to their original shape. Adaptability is about bouncing higher and taking that negative event and turning it into positive energy and coming out bigger, better, faster than you were before. And that's, you know, that is really using adaptability with both traditional psychology, which is neutralizing a negative, you know, which is what we did for 150 years since the study of psychology started. It's only in the last 30 years we've really been talking about positive psychology. And what adaptable minds can do is they can see that change is the best opportunity to do two things: make a difference and find out what you're really capable of achieving. And when you can see change in those terms, you know, that changes everything.
Rich, we've got a new coach for the All Blacks this year.
Do you really?
We do. He's a chap called Scott Robinson, and he's been coaching the Canterbury Crusaders down in Christchurch for the last few years, and he's the most successful coach that we've had in the modern era to date. And he's wacko. And he breakdances at the end of his games. If they win a series, his players get round and he breakdances on his back and stuff, right? And they clap and they chant. And it's going to be really interesting to see him. And they've fast-tracked him. Normally the All Blacks had this stupid system of you had to be there for so long, and they've fast-tracked him to bring him in. Thankfully. Hang on, I'm just going to close the door because somebody's making a noise out there and I can't tell them to be quiet because I won't get my dinner, Rich. Just hang on.
Priorities.
And I'm going to be, I think he epitomises adaptability because he's so unorthodox. And the players love him. And, you know, he was at the Crusaders, which is a very traditional, you know, franchise. And, you know, he's been a whiz at bringing people through, trying different things, and you never know what you know, and yet he's had success over a long period of time. And it's going to be really interesting to see what he does with the All Blacks. But it will be, you know, the All Blacks have been a bit stale the last, you know, half a dozen years. And it's going to be really interesting to see what this guy is capable of doing.
It's particularly brave to play about with something as successful as the All Blacks, the most successful team in the history of sports. I wrote a blog a long time ago about the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I said that phrase is broken in the modern era, and we need to reinvent it to be more like, if it ain't broke, that don't mean it works anymore. It might look like it still functions. And it might have been very tempting to carry on with this huge legacy that the All Blacks have got, just doing things and maybe tweaking and, shuffling around the edges and rearranging deck chairs. But it takes a brave guy to say, we're doing okay, but the All Black jersey has never been about okay. And we're really going to shake things up. And if that requires breakdancing, then, go for it. That is a highly there's a guy there prepared to take risks, prepared to fail forwards, and try something new. And it's a brilliant example.
And look, I'm blind to see if he takes that into the All Blacks. I think he will, because that's who he is. It's interesting, his breakdancing over the years has definitely deteriorated. He's not quite as flexible as he used to be. But, here's the thing that one of his first press conferences is what he said. We've got some players that are going to need help. And, he's talking about current All Blacks. And he's going, we've got some players that are going to need help. And I thought, we've never had a coach talk about that like that before, And they said, well, in which way? And he said, in lots of different ways, some of this and some of that. And, and a lot of it is talking about not just hard skill, but some of the soft skills as well.
Yeah.
And I'm going, beauty, And it was interesting. He nearly joined one of our collective intelligence teams and didn't, because it's just the schedule was just so crazy. But he was really interesting talking to me. He said, I get what you're doing. I'm into this, and it was just like, okay, this is cool. But in the end, we realised that we just couldn't fit in it. But, but the thing is, I think if you say the epitome of this guy is that, he is incredibly adaptable. And I think, I think in some of the traditional, we're seeing in some of our traditional industries, farming in particular, that people are wanting, and politicians are pandering to this, to make New Zealand great again. And it concerns me. And I think it becomes about fear of losing, having this negative mindset that there's not enough, and we want to grab hold of whatever we can and hold on to that status and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and look, I think that's a bit of a worrying trend around the world. As the financial crisis and the cost of living has gone through the roof, and wars in Europe, in the Middle East, people are just battening down the hatches, mentally and almost physically as well. And that is not helping the world become more adaptable. And the pace of change doesn't seem to be slowing. I'm always very careful when scaremongers like me, trying to drum up business, say, the world's changing at an increasingly faster rate of change. Is it actually? There are studies that demonstrate that it is. Things like Moore's law, about the integrated circuit performance probably doesn't apply anymore. So maybe the world isn't moving fast. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's moving faster than it did last year or slightly slower. It's much, much faster than most people can handle. Most organizations can handle. That's all we need to focus on. And yet at the same time, as you were saying about this make X great again, the currency for that is we just want to be isolationist. We want to be conservative with a small c. We want less change. We just want to spend all of our energy protecting what it is as it is right here, right now. We don't want new technology. We don't want immigration. We don't want our laws changed, even though we know that they're not serving us.
We certainly don't want to be made to look bad.
Right.
We have that here, around environmental stuff. New Zealand is a predominantly farming country, and that has got to change. That has got to change. We don't have an option because our standard of living is dropping and has been dropping consistently now for 50 years, and we need to do something about that. We've our productivity. We're 22nd in the world in productivity, and that's something that I've written down here, Rich. I'm interested to get your definition. What the hell is this productivity thing? And when you're in New Zealand, you would have heard how bad we are at productivity.
I've got lots of views on productivity. I mean, I grew up in factories, and the thing that sticks in my mind is I was lucky enough to meet a guy called Russ Aikoff from the Wharton School way back in about 2000. He was pretty old then, and unfortunately he's long dead now. But he worked with Deming in the 50s. And he talks about synthetic thinking, as opposed to analytical thinking, where you understand something by breaking it down. Synthetic thinking is you understand things by understanding the higher environment in which they operate. So don't break New Zealand down into its component parts. How does New Zealand fit into the world? That's the kind of thinking. What Russ said, Professor Aikoff said, was if you're doing the wrong thing and you do it more efficiently, you're just going to do it wronger, is what he said. So we need to be careful about productivity. If all you want to do is send sacks of dried powder to China, if you think that that's the most value-added way of getting value out of your cows, and sending, trees that the most value you've added to them is chopping them down, rather than creating fine dining tables, then there's productivity and productivity. We need to be looking at what is effective productivity as well as what is efficient. New Zealand has become extremely efficient in primary industries, but I would suggest, I'm a little bit out of date now with all things New Zealand, but from when I was there 5 years ago, I was very excited by some of the agri-tech that was happening around you in the Army. And I was delighted to see that those companies were thinking first of America and scaling. So there is some good stuff, but yeah, you're quite right. It needs to do more.
Look, there's a fascinating guy, Brian Richards. He's a branding dude, and he said, New Zealand has mastered the art of producing more fleece. And that's efficiency and all that sort of stuff, and just going faster and harder. Rich, where should New Zealand be working on increasing their productivity? What tips would you give us on that?
One thing that I saw that I really latched onto was this agri-tech space. So New Zealand has a global reputation. It's the world's largest exporter of milk. It exports to more countries than any other. When we think of New Zealand, we think of agriculture, and you're a million miles away from anywhere. Next stop, Dateline and a bunch of penguins.
Yeah.
So that's that's a handicap for you. But when you get into the world of software and moving small, intricate, high-tech pieces around the world, then it's much less of a problem. So what I saw coming out of the factory in Palmy, I just thought that felt like exactly the right kind of thing. Lean on your heritage, but actually modernize it, go high tech on all that kind of stuff, and then start adding value to what you already do. Use your rich resources, but don't export commodities. Turn it into something first. I think the Australians, they export a lot more of their dairy as cheese, and surely the country that produces some of the finest wines in the world. And I've cycled drunk through those vineyards. What a brilliant weekend that was. And out on Waiheke. Why aren't you doing the same with cheese? Here we are in the UK we're on the border with France, and we still produce some bloody good cheese.
Yeah.
When we can just reach over the channel 22 miles and take it from them.
Yeah.
But we do it ourselves anyway. My challenge would be, why aren't you? And I'm sure there are brilliant cheesemakers in New Zealand. We are.
I think my frustration, Rich, is that we're not, we've got the tall poppy thing here in New Zealand, sort of alive and well.
Yeah.
And as Sir Paul Callaghan said, New Zealand's very good at doing odd things. The America's Cup. I mean, what's that, right? Stuff that doesn't make sense. How do we compete against America? We took the America's Cup off them and kept it. They've won it back, but it's no country's ever done that before. So we can do stuff like that. There's a little tech company in Auckland that we've got some association with, and they take a weird little extra piece in here, peeps. I realised I had broached some confidentiality, so this is just a wee filler to say that's what's happened, and now back to the schedule. It's frustrating.
I want to pick up on that whole tall poppy syndrome because, funny enough, I mentioned Sweden. So I was working in Sweden before I was posted down to New Zealand, and they've got the same thing there, very socialist, and very much tall poppy syndrome. Why is it that the tall poppy syndrome exists and still exists today? What kind of psychology lies behind that? Because the reason I'm asking the question, and I don't know the answer, but I suspect that anybody who's got tall poppy syndrome, what a brilliant way to maintain the status quo that is.
Yep.
Why aren't we celebrating the tall poppies, the ones who drag us by the nose, kicking and screaming, into the brave new world and all of this change and embracing it and becoming a leader, not a follower, and using the we are 5 million or whatever it was. Jacinda said we're a team of 5 million during COVID. Why are you not? I mean, it is true. It seems like a big family. You can go to the Koru Lounge and see your politicians and your sports stars. In ways that you can't in the lounge at Heathrow.
We know All Blacks. We know people who've won gold medal.
Yeah, you're talking to the head coach of the most successful team in the history of sport.
Yeah,
and why we don't even bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
So why do you not have this collective intelligence as a country to really take the world by storm? Tall poppy syndrome is definitely getting in your way. Now, I'm not saying that we all need to be big mouths and shooting off about how brilliant we are. It's possible to be a humble tall poppy. They do exist. I don't know what it is that makes you as a society afraid to stand tall, but it's definitely getting in your way.
Yeah. We will accept it with sports people, Rich. And I'm just thinking about the thing with sports people. We like that. We like the sports people. We like them winning gold medals and stuff like that. And we win more gold medals per capita than any other country at the Olympics. So we're okay with that. I was just thinking about that discomfort thing, is that the tall poppies might be showing us that we need to pull our finger out.
Well, what they might also be telling you is how far behind you really are.
Yeah. And
we don't like that.
And we don't like that. We absolutely don't like that. It does get in our way. And, one of the things that I do love about the collective intelligence environment is that we celebrate like crazy, both victory and defeat, but, and treat those two imposters the same. But we love celebrating success. And the number of times we had one guy, one of our original members had a very successful construction business, and he showed us how successful it was, and the team were just like, brilliant. And the guy was in tears because he'd never been able to share it before.
Oh, goodness.
Because his family and, didn't, and I thought, how sad is this? And the guy was just sort of sitting there and just feeling so uncomfortable that the team's going, mate, you are seriously good at this, and you've done some wonderful stuff, And it was one of the most difficult pieces of feedback we've ever given.
And you can't get much more tangible than construction. Look, here's my success, right in front of us. Yeah, it should be easy to celebrate that, right?
Yeah. It's fascinating. Rich, what else would you like to talk about?
We should quit while we're ahead, Harv.
Are we ahead? That's good. I've never been ahead before. That's good.
Oh, you're always ahead.
Rich, I was thinking I miss having you in New Zealand, and anyway, I'll forgive you on the stage,
mate. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for the red telephone to ring, calling me back to do some work. I really, really miss New Zealand. The year after I left, I came back 5 times, and then COVID hit, and all ties seem to have been severed. So. I'm looking for an excuse to come back.
Fine. So, Rich, this is another conversation to have. We'll have it offline first, but we're embarking on some work at the moment, working with a company around adaptability and bringing more adaptability in this company, which is doing really well, and it's growing. And he's really interested in the adaptability, and we're going to create collective intelligence teams within his business, and we're going to look at how we bring more adaptability in. And
fantastic.
And he is, which prompted this call. I thought, right, I'll try and pick. I have no intention of putting this up as a podcast, Rich. This is just me picking your brains, okay?
Okay.
This is just for me. This is
not a surprise.
I never hit the record button, but he's fascinated in the intelligence that lies within his team and how he brings that out and gets that utilised more. And so
he's already ahead of the game because he's had that thought.
And so, and it was while I was on sabbatical, I sort of had the original thought as well. It was driving a little blue tractor on a vineyard, and there's 22 permanent staff, and I realised that they had no idea what each other were doing. In a team of 22, and I was just amazing. Like, wow, that's amazing. And they'd done their values work, but they didn't know how to actually bring it to life and live the values and all that sort of stuff. So, so that's a piece that I'm really looking forward to, and I'll be pointing him to this podcast is actually being recorded, and listen to this, because I think there is a huge opportunity if we can turn that tap on of and getting more people involved and maybe do some breakdancing. This business would be really important.
That I would get on a plane to see you breakdance.
I'd get down, but I wouldn't get back up again, Rich. Yeah. So, mate, what is there anything else that you want to put on the table with this conversation? Anything we've missed?
No, I don't think so. No, I think we've kind of covered it all. I suppose the only message I really want to get across to people is, and I think I've said it already, just understand that it is entirely possible to become more adaptable. We don't have to put up with the same attitude to change that we have today, or the one that we thought we were born with. And there is a world of change going to hit us, sideswipe us, knock us off our feet, and that makes people fearful and anxious. And you can't stop feeling fear, but you can learn to control it. You can't stop feeling anxiety, but you can learn to manage it. These things are entirely possible, and I hope it's a message of hope that whatever is going to happen next, you can learn to become more confident about whatever it is that is lurking around the corner, good and bad, to lift you up and bite you in the bum at the same time.
There's one thing I've just realised that I want to just put on the table, Rich, that your work, you're not talking about change management. No. As I said at the beginning, the change management is really, it only has the life of a project, a beginning, a middle, and end. Yeah. Change managers do not have time to change your attitude to change. They only have the time, money, scope, and ability to change what you do, not how you think about change. The two are very, very different. Yeah. So, Rich, I've got family in the UK. I need to come over and see at some stage soon. So brilliant. I'm free on Tuesday. Come on over. Tuesdays are good for me too. And you've been rattling the cage about starting a collective intelligence team or teams in the UK, and that's... No, I've been rattling the cage that you should. I never said I would. Yes. This country needs collective intelligence. So, anyway, that thought hasn't disappeared. It's still there, good. That would be interesting to see it play out in the UK. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, Rich, have a nice day. I'm going to go off and have a beer on a Thursday evening. Nobody knows that I had a beer before, and I stopped drinking, which was pretty good. I think I've gone all right, Rich, with just a wee... Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Right. Look, thanks for having me on, Harv. It was fun last time. It was better this time. It's all good. You're an absolute star. I improve. I love your work. Thank you, Rich. And you know what? That means a lot to me. It really does. It's I've always appreciated your support. And at one stage you said, I'm not sure if you're brilliant or just stupid. And I said, well, flip what between the two. It's a great spectrum. It's a great spectrum. Okay, brother. Rich, thank you for this. Go well. And you too, enjoy your work with the big boys up there, and I will be looking you up when I'm over there. Excellent. Look forward to it, Harv.